My name is Edna, and at 61 years old, I thought I had finally earned the right to live for myself. 2 years after my husband Walter passed away, I bought a small house in secret. It was going to be my fresh start, my sanctuary, my place to heal and grow. But I never imagined that my own son had already made plans for it, plans that didn't include me. Before I share what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if you've ever felt taken for granted by someone you love, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, because this story takes a turn you won't see coming. Now let me tell you how I discovered what my own son was planning behind my back. I met Walter when I was 23 years old. He was 25, working as an electrician's apprentice in Denver, Colorado. I was a nursing student working night shifts at the hospital to pay for school. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony at my parents' church. The years that followed were good ones. We had 2 children. Brian came first, then 3 years later, Kathleen. We raised them in a modest 3-bedroom house on the east side of Phoenix where Walter had gotten steady work. Life wasn't easy, but it was ours. Walter worked long hours, sometimes 6 days a week. I worked double shifts at the hospital whenever we needed extra money. We saved every penny we could for our children's education. Brian went to Arizona State University and graduated with a degree in business. Kathleen studied graphic design in Seattle and stayed there after graduation. We were so proud of them both. When Brian got married to Stephanie 12 years ago, Walter and I gave them $15,000 toward their first house. It wasn't easy to part with that money. We had been saving it for our retirement. But Brian was our son, and we wanted to help him start his life. Stephanie seemed like a nice girl back then. Quiet, polite, always thanking us for watching the kids. The grandchildren came next. Kyle was born 8 years ago, and Zoe followed 3 years later. I loved those children with my whole heart. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I would drive to Brian's house and watch them while he and Stephanie worked. I'd make them lunch, help Kyle with his homework, read stories to Zoe. Those were precious hours. Then, 2 years ago, everything changed. Walter had a stroke while working on a job site. He was 65 years old. The doctor said it was massive. He died 3 days later without ever waking up. The world went dark for me. 38 years of marriage gone in an instant. The months after Walter's death were the hardest of my life. I wandered through our house like a ghost. Every room held memories. The kitchen where we'd had coffee together every morning. The living room where we'd watched television holding hands. The bedroom where we'd shared our dreams and fears. I couldn't escape him, and I wasn't sure I wanted to. Brian and Stephanie came by often at first. They brought the kids. They brought casseroles. Brian mowed the lawn, but I could see the worry in their eyes. They thought I was fragile. Maybe I was. Kathleen called every Sunday from Seattle, urging me to consider moving to start fresh, but I couldn't imagine leaving the house Walter and I had built our life in. Then, 6 months ago, something shifted inside me. I was driving home from the grocery store when I passed a small house with a for sale sign in the front yard. It was in Scottsdale, about 30 minutes from my old neighborhood. Something made me pull over. The house was modest. 2 bedrooms, cream-colored stucco, a little front porch with terracotta tiles. The yard had a lemon tree and some struggling rose bushes. I sat in my car staring at that house for 20 minutes. In my mind, I could see myself there. I could see morning coffee on that porch. I could see myself planting new flowers, bringing those roses back to life. I could see a future that wasn't drowning in the past. The next day, I called the real estate agent. The house was within my budget. Walter's life insurance combined with our savings meant I could buy it outright. No mortgage, no debt. Just a clean start. I went to see it 3 times before I made an offer. Each time, I felt more certain. This wasn't about forgetting Walter. This was about learning to live again. I didn't tell Brian about the house. I'm not sure why. Maybe I wanted something that was entirely mine. Maybe I was tired of everyone treating me like I couldn't make decisions. I did tell Kathleen during one of our Sunday calls. She was thrilled. "Go for it, Mom," she said. "You deserve this. You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else." The closing process took 2 months. I signed papers, transferred funds, and received the keys on a sunny Thursday afternoon in March. Standing in that empty house holding those keys, I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 years. Hope. I hired painters to refresh the walls in a soft sage green. I had the tile floors cleaned until they shone. I bought new curtains light and airy that let the sunshine pour through. I ordered a small dining table, a comfortable reading chair, and a bed frame that didn't remind me of the one Walter and I had shared. Every choice was mine. Every decision felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. About a week after I closed on the house, Brian started asking questions. We were having dinner at his place. Stephanie had made pot roast. The kids were playing in the backyard. Brian looked at me across the table and said, "Mom, are you thinking about moving?" I looked up, surprised. "Why do you ask?" He shrugged, but something in his expression seemed calculated. "Just wondering. The house is pretty big for just you. Must be hard keeping it up." "I manage fine," I said. "Sure, sure." He nodded. "But have you thought about maybe downsizing an apartment, maybe less maintenance, more security?" I told him I'd think about it, which was true in a way. I was thinking about it. I just wasn't thinking about it the way he assumed. A few days later, Brian stopped by my house unannounced. This wasn't unusual. He had a key and often dropped in to check on me, but this time felt different. He walked through the rooms slowly, looking around like he was appraising them. "How are you doing with money, Mom?" he asked suddenly. "Do you need help with anything?" "I'm fine, Brian. Your father left me well provided for." "The insurance money?" "Yes, and our savings." He nodded slowly. "That's good. That's really good. So you're comfortable then?" "Very comfortable." "Good, good." He kept nodding. "Because if you ever needed anything, you know, Stephanie and I would help." "I know, honey. Thank you." But the conversation left me uneasy. Why was he suddenly so interested in my finances? Then Stephanie started joining the conversations. The next week, when I went to watch the kids, she sat down with me while they napped. "Edna, Brian, and I have been talking," she began. Her voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to ask for something. "We were wondering about your plans. Are you planning to sell the house?" "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" I tried to keep my voice light. "We just care about you. We want to make sure you're making good decisions." "I appreciate that. It's just that the market is really good right now. If you were going to sell, now would be the time." I told her I'd keep that in mind. But the strangest moment came 2 days later at the grocery store. I ran into Carol, Stephanie's mother. We'd always been cordial, exchanging pleasantries at family gatherings. But that day, her greeting was odd. "Edna, how wonderful to see you." She grabbed my arm like we were old friends. "I heard you might be getting a new place. That's so exciting." My stomach dropped. "How did you hear that?" Her face flushed. "Oh, didn't Stephanie mention it? Maybe I misunderstood. I thought she said you were looking at houses." "No, you must have misunderstood." Yes, I'm sure I did. Getting old, you know. Can't keep things straight." She laughed nervously and hurried away. I stood in the produce aisle, gripping my shopping cart. How did Carol know I hadn't told Brian or Stephanie anything specific? Had they somehow found out? That evening I called Brian. "Did you tell Stephanie I was looking at houses?" There was a pause. "I might have mentioned you were thinking about it." "Why?" "I ran into Carol today. She seemed to know about it." "Oh, well, Stephanie probably mentioned it to her mom. You know how they are. Nothing specific, just that you might be considering options." "I see. Is there a problem, Mom?" "No, no problem." But there was a problem. A big one. Someone had been talking about my business, and I had a sinking feeling about what might be coming next. Meanwhile, I continued preparing my new house. I spent afternoons there directing furniture deliveries, hanging pictures, making it feel like home. I planned to move in at the end of the month. After that, I would invite Brian and his family over for dinner and show them my new beginning. I imagined their surprise, their happiness for me. I had no idea that my son had already found the house and had made very different plans for it. It was a Wednesday afternoon. I'd scheduled the final walkthrough with my contractor to check on the paint job. I parked on the street behind the house, planning to enter through the back gate to look at the yard work first. As I approached the back door, I heard voices inside. My first thought was that the contractor had brought someone to finish a last-minute repair. But as I got closer, I recognized one of the voices. It was Brian. My hand froze on the door handle. What was Brian doing here? I hadn't told him the address. My heart started pounding. Slowly, quietly, I opened the door and slipped inside. The voices were coming from the front of the house. I crept down the hallway, staying close to the wall. Through the archway to the living room, I could see them. Brian, Stephanie, Carol, and another woman I didn't recognize, younger, maybe one of Stephanie's friends. They were walking through my house like they owned it. Brian stood in the center of the living room, gesturing around. "This will be perfect for the kids," he was saying. "Kyle's been begging for his own room. And Zoe can have the smaller bedroom. It's just her size." Stephanie walked over to the window. "The light in here is beautiful. And look at that backyard. The kids will love playing out there." Carol peeked down the hallway toward where I was hiding. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. "Which room would be mine?" she asked. "We were thinking the bedroom off the kitchen," Stephanie said. "It's close to everything. You can help with the kids and you'll have your privacy." "Perfect." Carol clapped her hands together. "I'm so grateful you're letting me move in with you. I was dreading staying in that tiny apartment." The other woman, the one I didn't know, walked around touching the walls. "This is such a lovely house. You guys are so lucky. How did you find it?" Brian exchanged a glance with Stephanie. "We have our ways." My legs felt weak. They were talking about my house. My house. The one I bought with my money. The money Walter and I had saved. They were dividing up the bedrooms like it was already theirs. "Have you talked to your mom about it yet?" the friend asked. Brian's expression hardened slightly. "Not directly, but we've been dropping hints. She'll understand. She doesn't need this much space." Stephanie nodded. "Our place is way too small now, especially with Mom moving in. And Edna's alone in that big house. It just makes sense." "What if she says no?" the friend asked. Brian's jaw tightened. "She won't. She loves the grandkids. Once she understands how much we need this, she'll agree." "We already decided," Stephanie added firmly. "We're going to talk to her this weekend. She'll see it makes sense for everyone." Those 3 words hit me like a punch to the stomach. We already decided. They had decided. About my house, without asking me, without even considering that I might have my own plans. Carol walked back toward the kitchen. "When would we move in?" "Probably in a month or 2, Brian said. "We need to give Mom time to process it. Let her think it's her idea. Then we'll help her move into something smaller." "An apartment would be perfect for her," Stephanie agreed. "Something with no maintenance. She's getting older. She doesn't need the responsibility of a whole house." The rage that flooded through me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. I wanted to march into that room and throw them all out. I wanted to scream at my son for his presumption, his entitlement, his complete disregard for my autonomy. But I didn't. Some instinct made me stay silent. Some deep part of me knew that confronting them now in this moment wouldn't be enough. I needed to know how far they would go. I needed to hear them ask me directly. I needed to see their faces when I said no. So I backed slowly down the hallway, out the back door, and to my car. My hands shook so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I sat there for 10 minutes watching the front of the house, waiting for them to leave. They finally emerged, all 4 of them laughing and chatting. Brian locked the front door. With my key. He had somehow gotten a key to my house. They walked to their cars, still talking, still planning their future in my home. After they drove away, I sat in my car and cried. Not sad tears, angry tears, betrayed tears. How could my son do this? How could he think it was acceptable to take what was mine after everything Walter and I had done for him? After all the sacrifices we'd made? But beneath the anger was something else. Determination. I had spent 61 years putting others first. I had raised my children. I had supported my husband. I had worked myself to exhaustion so they could have better lives. And now when I finally wanted something for myself, my son thought he could just take it. Not this time. I drove home in a daze. The house that had felt so empty and sad for 2 years now felt like a trap. I walked through the rooms looking at the photos on the walls. Baby Brian in his first Halloween costume, Brian's high school graduation, Brian's wedding. My whole life had been about him and Kathleen, and this was how he repaid me. I sat down at the kitchen table and forced myself to think clearly. Brian had obviously found out about the house somehow. Maybe he'd followed me. Maybe he'd seen paperwork. It didn't matter how. What mattered was that he thought he could manipulate me into handing it over. I needed to talk to someone who would understand. I called Kathleen in Seattle. Mom? Hi. I was just thinking about you. Honey, I need to tell you something. My voice cracked. What's wrong? Are you okay? I told her everything. The questions from Brian and Stephanie, Carol's comment at the grocery store, finding them in my house today, the whole horrible conversation I'd overheard. By the time I finished, Kathleen was practically shouting, Are you kidding me? Brian thinks he can just take your house. Apparently. Mom, this is insane. You bought that house for yourself. With your money. After everything you and Dad did for him. He has some nerve? I know. What are you going to do? I'm not sure yet. Part of me wants to call him right now and tell him to forget it. But another part of me wants to wait. I want to see exactly what he'll say to my face. Be careful, Mom. Don't let him guilt trip you. You know he'll use the kids. I know he will. Promise me you won't just give in because it's easier. I won't. I promise. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet house thinking. Brian would probably call soon to set up that conversation he'd mentioned, the one where he'd convince me to hand over my house. I decided I would let him try. I would listen to his pitch, and then I would show him that his mother was not the pushover he thought she was. 3 days later, Brian called. His voice was cheerful, casual. Hey, Mom, you busy this Saturday? Not particularly. Great, Stephanie and I want to come by and talk to you about something. Just the three of us. We'll leave the kids with Carol. Of course they would. Can't have the kids around when you're trying to manipulate Grandma. What time? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. How about 2 o'clock? We'll bring coffee and those muffins you like from the bakery. That sounds fine. Perfect. See you then, Mom. Love you. Love you too. I hung up and stared at the phone. They were bringing muffins, like this was just a friendly visit, like they weren't about to ask me to give up the one thing I'd done for myself in 2 years. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. When Saturday arrived, I was ready. I'd spent the morning cleaning the house more out of nervous energy than necessity. At exactly 2 o'clock, Brian's car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as he and Stephanie got out. They looked relaxed, confident. Stephanie was carrying a bakery box. Brian had a cardboard coffee carrier. They thought this was going to be easy. I opened the door before they could knock. Come in. We settled in the living room. The same living room where Walter and I had hosted countless family dinners, where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, where we'd built a life. And now my son was going to sit on my couch and ask me to give it all up. Brian handed me a coffee. How have you been, Mom? Good. Keeping busy. That's great. The house looks nice. Thank you. There was an awkward pause. Stephanie smiled at me, that practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Edna, we wanted to talk to you about something important. I'm listening. Brian leaned forward, his expression earnest. Mom, you've been alone in this big house for 2 years now. We know how hard that must be. I said nothing. And we've been thinking, he continued, about your future, about what makes sense for you. Go on. Stephanie jumped in. The thing is, Edna, you don't need all this space. It must be exhausting keeping up with everything. The yard work, the repairs, the maintenance. I manage. Of course you do. Brian's voice was soothing, patronizing. But why should you have to? You're 61 years old. You should be enjoying life, not worrying about leaky faucets and lawn mowing. What exactly are you suggesting? Brian and Stephanie exchanged a glance. We think you should consider downsizing, moving into something smaller, easier, maybe a nice apartment complex with amenities. And what would happen to this house? Another glance between them. Well, that's the thing. Our place is getting really cramped. With 2 kids and Carol moving in with us, we're running out of room. There it was. The ask, the presumption. I kept my face neutral. I see. So we were thinking, Brian continued, his voice gaining confidence. What if we moved into this house? You could move somewhere smaller and simpler, and we'd take care of this place. It stays in the family. You want my house? We want what's best for everyone, Mom. This house is too much for you. We need the space. It's a perfect solution. I took a sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch. They shifted uncomfortably. Finally, Stephanie spoke again. There's something else. We heard you might have found a new place already. Is that true? So they were going to admit they knew. Where did you hear that? Brian cleared his throat. Someone mentioned seeing you looking at houses in Scottsdale. We just wanted to know if it's true. And if it is, then that's great. His voice was too enthusiastic. That means you've already got somewhere to go, so moving out of here would be even easier. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Let me make sure I understand. You want me to move out of this house so you can move in, and you think if I've bought another place that makes it easier for you to take this one. It's not taking Mom. It's family helping family. And what about my new place, the one in Scottsdale? They looked at each other. Brian spoke carefully. We actually wanted to talk to you about that, too. If you have a new place, we'd love to know more about it. Maybe we could work something out there instead. My blood turned to ice. They wanted both houses. This house and the new one. The sheer audacity of it took my breath away. I stood up. Brian and Stephanie looked startled. I walked to the window, my back to them, trying to control the rage building inside me. How did you know about the house in Scottsdale? My voice was quiet. Mom? I turned around. How did you know? Brian had the decency to look uncomfortable. I saw some paperwork in your car a few weeks ago when I borrowed it to go to the hardware store. You went through my papers. I wasn't snooping. It was just sitting there on the passenger seat. And you looked up the address. Silence. And you went there. You got a key somehow. And you gave a tour to your wife, her mother, and some friend of yours, walking through my house like you already owned it. Stephanie gasped. You were there. I was there. I heard everything. This will be perfect for the kids. Which room will be mine? We already decided. I looked directly at Brian. Those were your words, weren't they? We already decided. Brian stood up. His face flushed. Mom, let me explain. Explain what? Explain how you decided to take my house without asking me. Explain how you planned to manipulate me into thinking it was my idea. Explain how you've been lying to my face for weeks. We weren't lying. We were trying to find the right time to talk to you. By going into my house without permission, by making plans for rooms and move-in dates, you weren't looking for the right time to ask me. You were looking for the right time to tell me. Stephanie stood too. Edna, you're not being fair. We have a family. We have needs. You're one person. You don't need a whole house. I don't need it. My voice rose. Let me tell you what I don't need. I don't need my son treating me like I'm incompetent. I don't need my daughter-in-law telling me what I deserve. And I don't need either of you making decisions about my property. Brian's face was red, now angry. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Brian, your father and I paid for your college. Every single semester. That was $40,000. We gave you $15,000 for your first house. We've watched your children every week for 8 years. Free childcare that would have cost you hundreds of dollars a week. We've helped you whenever you asked. And you think you're the one who's done everything? That's what parents do. Yes, it is. And now that I want to do something for myself, you think you have the right to take it from me. You're being selfish. The word hit me like a slap. I stared at my son, this man I had raised, who is now calling me selfish for wanting to keep my own house. Selfish? I repeated slowly. I'm 61 years old. I've spent my entire adult life taking care of other people. I worked double shifts as a nurse so you could have a good life. I cooked every meal, washed every piece of clothing, drove you to every practice and game and event. I stayed up with you when you were sick. I helped you with homework. I threw you a graduation party. I paid for your wedding flowers when you went over budget. I have given and given and given. And the one time I want something for myself, I'm selfish. Brian's jaw was tight. You could still have something for yourself. Just something smaller. We need this house. No, you want this house. There's a difference. Stephanie jumped in. We promised Carol she could live with us. We told her she could have her own room. What are we supposed to do now? That sounds like a problem you need to solve. Not my problem. You're unbelievable. Stephanie's voice was sharp now, the polite mask dropping. "We're your family. We're your son and grandchildren. And you're choosing a house over us. I'm not choosing a house over you. I'm choosing myself. For once in my life, I'm choosing myself." Brian grabbed his keys from the coffee table. "Fine, if that's how you want it. But don't expect us to come around anymore. Don't expect to see the kids." The threat hung in the air. He was going to use my grandchildren as weapons. The pain of it was sharp and real. But I'd come too far to back down now. "If that's your choice, Brian." "It is my choice." He headed for the door. Stephanie followed, but she turned back at the threshold. "You're making a huge mistake, Edna. The only mistake I made was not standing up for myself sooner." They left. The door slammed behind them. I stood in my living room, shaking tears streaming down my face. But underneath the pain and anger, there was something else. Something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Pride. The week after the confrontation was difficult. I kept expecting Brian to call to apologize, to say he'd been wrong. But the phone stayed silent. No calls. No texts. Nothing. Kathleen called me 3 times, checking in, making sure I was okay. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said. "I know this hurts, but you did the right thing." "Did I? I might have just lost my son and grandchildren." "No. Brian made that choice. Not you. You just refused to be a doormat." I threw myself into finishing the new house. I moved in the following Saturday. Kathleen flew in from Seattle to help me. We spent the weekend unpacking boxes, hanging curtains, arranging furniture. She brought fresh flowers for the kitchen table and a bottle of wine to christen the new place. "Two fresh starts," she said, raising her glass. "Two fresh starts," I echoed. That night, lying in my new bedroom, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a different neighborhood, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Yes, I missed my grandchildren. Yes, I was hurt by Brian's behavior. But I was also free. Free from the weight of everyone else's expectations. Free to live my own life. The house was perfect. Light poured through the windows every morning. The lemon tree in the backyard produced fruit. I planted new roses, better varieties that thrived in the Arizona heat. I met my neighbors. A retired teacher named Helen lived next door. We started having coffee together on Tuesday mornings. I joined a garden club in the neighborhood. I started volunteering at the hospital again just 1 day a week. I took a painting class at the community center. For the first time in years, I wasn't someone's wife or someone's mother. I was just Edna, and I was learning to like her. 3 weeks after the move, I received a text message. It was from Kyle, my 8-year-old grandson. My heart lurched when I saw his name. "Grandma, why don't you visit anymore? I miss you." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I called Brian. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice cold. "What?" "I got a text from Kyle. So I want to see my grandchildren, Brian. Whatever is between us, they don't deserve to be punished for it." Silence. Then, "I don't think that's a good idea right now." "Don't use the kids as weapons. They're not bargaining chips." More silence. I could hear him breathing. Finally, "Fine. You can see them. But not here. They can come to my house." Where I gave him the address. "This Saturday, 2 o'clock. You can drop them off for a few hours." "Fine." He hung up without saying goodbye. That Saturday, Brian pulled into my driveway with both kids in the back seat. I watched from the window as they got out. Kyle and Zoe looked around with wide eyes. Brian walked them to the door, his face stony. I opened it before he could knock. "Hi, sweethearts." Kyle and Zoe rushed forward, hugging me tight. "Grandma, we missed you so much." "I missed you too, my loves. Come see my new house." Brian stood on the porch, hands in his pockets. Our eyes met for a brief second. I saw something there. Regret, maybe. Or shame. But he didn't speak. He just nodded and walked back to his car. The kids loved the house. Kyle ran around the backyard excited about the lemon tree. "Can we pick lemons, Grandma?" "Absolutely. We can make lemonade together." Zoe found the flowers I'd planted. "These are so pretty. Can I help you water them?" "Anytime you want, sweetheart." We spent the afternoon baking cookies, playing in the yard, and reading books on the porch. When Brian came to pick them up, both kids begged to come back soon. "Can we, Dad, please?" Kyle tugged on Brian's sleeve. "We'll see," he said, not looking at me. After they left, I stood on my porch watching the sunset. I had my house. I had my independence. And I had my grandchildren, at least sometimes. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. 2 months later, I made another decision. I put my old house on the market, the one where Walter and I had raised our children. As much as I loved that house, I didn't need it anymore. It represented a chapter of my life that had closed. The house sold quickly. The market was good, just like Stephanie had said. I made a substantial profit. I put most of it into a retirement account. Some of it I set aside for Kathleen and the grandchildren. Not Brian. Not yet. Maybe someday when he learned what it meant to respect boundaries. But not now. I was living on my terms, making my own choices, and it felt powerful. 6 months have passed since I moved into this house. 6 months since the confrontation with Brian. Our relationship is still strained. He drops the kids off every other Saturday, but he rarely comes inside. We exchange pleasantries, nothing more. Stephanie doesn't come at all. But the kids are happy here. They have their own shelf of books in my living room, their own toys in a basket. We've established Saturday traditions: lemonade from the tree, cookies in the afternoon, stories on the porch. They tell me about school, their friends, their lives. And I cherish every minute. Kathleen visits once a month now. She loves the house almost as much as I do. Last month, she brought a man with her, someone she's been seeing in Seattle. They're getting serious. I'm happy for her. She deserves love and joy. I've made friends in my new neighborhood. Helen and I have coffee every Tuesday. I joined a book club that meets on Thursday evenings. I volunteer at the hospital every Wednesday. My calendar is full, in a way it hasn't been in years. Sometimes I still think about Brian. I wonder if we'll ever repair our relationship. I hope so. He's my son, and I love him. But I also know that love doesn't mean sacrifice. It doesn't mean giving up who you are to please someone else. I spent too many years believing otherwise. I've learned that boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary. That saying no isn't selfish. It's self-respect. That wanting things for yourself doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you human. I look around this house, my house, and I feel grateful. The morning light on the kitchen floor, the roses blooming in the backyard, the lemon tree, heavy with fruit, the quiet evenings with a book and a cup of tea. This is the life I chose, the life I fought for, the life I deserve. Walter would be proud of me, I think. He always said I was stronger than I gave myself credit for. He was right. It just took me 61 years to believe it. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Brian and I will find our way back to each other. Maybe we won't. Maybe our relationship will always carry this scar. But I've made peace with that possibility, because I've also discovered something more important. I've discovered myself. This house represents more than 4 walls and a roof. It represents choice, freedom, self-worth. It represents a woman who finally understood that she mattered too, that her dreams were valid, that her happiness was important. And you know what? I'm not sorry. Not for buying this house. Not for standing up to Brian. Not for choosing myself. Because after a lifetime of putting everyone else first, I finally learned the most important lesson of all. I deserve to live for myself. And so do you. I am no longer living in the shadow of other people's expectations. I am no longer measuring my worth by how much I sacrifice. I am free, and that after 61 years is worth everything. Before I let you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family? Have you ever been made to feel selfish for wanting something of your own? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about real people finding their strength. Thank you for listening to my story. I wish you the courage to stand up for yourself, the wisdom to know your worth, and the freedom to live the life you choose. Take care of yourselves. You deserve it.